Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, April 19th, 2016. I'm Michael Brooks, pinch hitting for Sam Seder, and this is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Professor Anthony Pereira, director of the Brazil Institute at King's College in London, is going to join us to talk about the hidden story of what's happening in Brazil. President Dilma Rousseff impeached by the lower house there, and impeachment proceedings proceeding to the Senate in early May. But is this really just a coup pushed through the judiciary system? We'll talk about all of that with him. And of course, it is Election Day in New York City. Many people feeling the burn. Many people feeling the hill. Lots of people feeling the Donald. No one feeling the Cruz. I already voted before I did an appearance this morning on Sirius XM. It was a great pleasure to vote for Bernie. President Obama is on his way to Riyadh as instability grips the Saudi state, the Saudi monarchy, and in some respects an unprecedented way. Horrific bombings in Kabul and Afghanistan leave dozens dead, hundreds injured. We'll get to that. And Bernie Sanders, again, has been an unmitigated positive for the process. We have more sound from him rallying the troops in Long Island City, talking about the awakening propelling his campaign, the bigger picture behind it that will carry on and endure, whether it leads him to the presidency or in any other scenario. Rudy Giuliani really backs Donald Trump, but he really wants you to know that he doesn't work for him. I wonder what's going on with that little racist guy. John Kasich really outdoing himself, just being a schmuck. It's like New York brings it out in him. And Laura Ingraham had a meltdown. See, we go from the high to the very low on this program. What's the geopolitics driving instability in Saudi Arabia? What's really happening in Brazil? The primary today in New York that will determine the future in some respects of this country. And Laura Ingram had a temper tantrum. Guys, there's a brand new episode of Two Dope Boys in a Podcast. Brand F-Up of the Week involves Starbucks. We talk about the collapse of Al Jazeera and the failure of having a media outlet that wasn't necessarily left or not left, but established in a different geographic zone, center of gravity in the southern hemisphere versus London, New York, or D.C. And then we talked about selling out, what it is and what it isn't. We have an amazing group of people around us that rotate as crew members. Hyung Kim at Madberry Club, Georgette Pierre, she is a writer, hosts a dating show called Dear Georgette, which actually I taped a couple episodes of over the weekend. Maybe I'll talk about that in the fun half. Need you to subscribe today. The best way right now to subscribe to it, and we'll put a link to it on Majority Report FM, is at iTunes. 2, Dope Boys and a Podcast. We got an awesome review on iTunes over the weekend. We got a couple of awesome reviews, and we haven't done this before, but I just wanted to highlight one because it gives you a good flavor of the show. Matt, can you give that a quick read?
Yeah, so this is from an artesian thing. Oh, wait, is this the right one?
So it's the one right above that, I think.
There's no one. There's none. So I need the podcast.
Oh, okay, that's fine. You can read that one. That was good, too.
Okay, here it is. So I need this podcast for my work as a creative. It's so smart, and on top of everything, the evil side of app dating, ghosting, why soca music is about to go global, why the middle class is disappearing, and the brand screw-up of the week. We see you, Chingy, and Whole Foods. Michael and Phil have really good rapport, and I can't wait to hear more from the crew. Now going to be a weekly listener.
Awesome. So thank you, everybody, so much for making that happen. And none of it could happen without comfortable underwear, which is why, we talk about how much time you spend sleeping. You spend literally, well, not literally, hopefully, but you spend a lot of time in your underwear. I hope you have aspects of your life.
You're not a never nude.
Yeah, I hope.
Culture reference goes.
Yeah, I hope you're not. I hope there's not an Arrested Development situation. I hope that, but I do hope that while you're in underwear, you are doing it in the most comfortable way possible, which is why I'm very happy to talk to you about our new sponsor. That is MeUndies. Whether you're wearing suits or sweats, you spend almost 24 hours a day in your underwear. But instead of making a statement like Superman's tights under his everyday clothes, your underwear is probably boring. MeUndies is here to change that. Every part of your life should have style, folks. Every pair of MeUndies is made from a sustainably sourced modal fabric that is twice as soft as cotton. Nothing can describe the fit and feel of MeUndies, but once you try them, you'll understand why they've been called the world's most comfortable underwear. And if you don't love your first pair of MeUndies, they're free. No questions asked. MeUndies have dozens of styles, limited edition prints to help you make a statement with your underwear, whether anyone can see them or not. Remember Superman. Shipping is free to the U.S. and Canada, and you can save up to $8 off a pair of MeUndies with a subscription plan. Get a subscription plan or a single pair. Get a subscription or a single pair and get 20% off of your first order when you go to MeUndies.com/majority. That's MeUndies.com/majority for 20 off of your first order. MeUndies.com/majority. It's a pretty awesome product. Tomorrow, if you are a member, you are going to get a breakdown of what happened in New York, brand new. That's going to be taped in Vegas with Sam Seder and Cliff Schechter, if you are a member. If you're not a member, but you go to our website and you go scroll down to the sign-up page and you sign up for the email blast, the Seder Reader, which you want to sign up for regardless, you will get that show. You just scroll to the bottom of the page, right, Matt?
Well, there's a bit of a mix-up. It's not the way bottom sign-up. It's the one below it. So you scroll down and see the first one.
Scroll down, see the first one. There's two. You want to go to the first one that you see. Put in your email address. Subscribe to the Seder Reader, and you will get Sam and Cliff's conversation tomorrow, recorded after the New York primary results. Also, for all of this month at justcoffee.coop, you can get 30% off of your offer with the promo code MRSpring16. That's MRSpring16. There's a link to it on our website with the promo code as well. We will be right back with Anthony Pereira. Feel the burn.
Give me the remedy, the fire figure burn. I said the tables turn. Give me the remedy, the fire figure blaze. Burn Babylon dirty way. Special. Eternal fire. Dirty Babylon, you a go get bruised. Me a want them fire. I said they just can't win, you're going lose. We a want them. Pack up and walk. Me I beg you move, yeah. I beg you pack up and walk. Me said the movement alive. Marcus said fi organize and centralize. Rasta fi own banks and enterprise. So me nah stop chanting, my soul enters Zion. Princes of fire, Babylon me tell you your time just expire. What kind of wickedness me or you transpire? And no gasoline and no tire. Eternal fire, dirty Babylon you a go get bruised. Me I want them fire. I said they just can't win, you're going lose. So we I want them. I beg you pop up and go. Me I tell you I tell you pack up and go. Where them a go with a key and saltfish when better them give me a key and garlic. That's right. Pass me a map and a compass on ya. Make me show them say saltfish no come from on ya. The fish they come a far away. They bring him all the way.
Welcome back to the Majority Report. I am Michael Brooks, and joining us now is Professor Anthony Pereira. He is the director of the Brazil Institute at King's College, London. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.
So wanted to speak with you about this unfolding crisis in Brazil. There is a pretty sort of broad narrative to this that you see in, the American press, and actually apparently emanating from a lot of the Brazilian press, that this is a simple question of corruption, civil society uprising. It seems to be a bit more complicated than that. But in order to situate the conversation, can you help anchor us in understanding who these two figures are? That's Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President Dilma Rousseff. He was the former president, and he's a founder of the Workers' Party, which they are both members of. Take us into their history, maybe starting with Lula.
Right. These two figures, Lula and Dilma, in a way represent two of the most important forces in the Workers' Party. It was formed at the end of the 1970s, and one anchor of it was the trade union movement. So the trade union movement in the ABC region, mostly auto workers, had some strikes in 1979 that really defied the military dictatorship. Brazil had a dictatorship from 64 to 85. And Lula, as the leader of the auto workers in that region, emerged as one of the key leaders of the opposition to the military dictatorship. So he became president of the party early on. He was always the most important leader. He ran for president in 89, 94, 98, and finally won presidency in 2002. Dilma comes out of the armed left because there were some mostly young people, mostly students, who decided in the late 60s, when the regime got much more repressive and cracked down, they decided to take up arms. And so there were lots of kind of splintered left groups. The Communist Party was actually not in favor of armed action against the dictatorship. And a lot of them were very severely dealt with. So Dilma herself was arrested, tortured quite badly, and ended up 3 years as a prisoner. And so those two forces came together in the late 70s, early 80s. And they were also joined by people who were influenced by liberation theology. Mm-hmm. And the Workers' Party also attracted a lot of middle-class intellectuals, people from the universities, people from the public sector. And it was a really small party at the beginning. And in fact, a lot of its features were that it was more of a sort of conglomeration of social movements than it was an actual political party. And there was a really interesting internal debate in the party in the 1980s of how much like a professional party they should become. But they did become a very professionalized party. They started winning a lot of mayorships, a lot of governorships, and as I said, they got the presidency in 2002. Lula's administration started in 2003, and they've now had they've been the major party in a coalition government at the national level for 14 years. And so part of what this is about is getting the Workers' Party out of that position.
Absolutely, and we'll certainly get to that. But just to underlie this history, it actually reminds me in some ways, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a debate in the 80s in European, particularly German Green Party, between the kind of Relos or Fundies, and that similar kind of debate. Or are we sort of a political party that organizes activists, or do we want to actually take and assume power? And Lula, I believe, ran for the presidency of Brazil 3 times before winning in 2002. What did he have to do, both in terms of the kind of practical mechanisms inside the Workers' Party and in terms of his broader image, just even from a PR perspective for the public, or from a policy perspective, his commitments on macroeconomic policy to get there on the 4th try?
That's a great question, because that is a pivotal moment in the history of the party. As you said, it had a kind of Green Party social movement feel to it for a long time, and it was always internally quite democratic and very programmatic and ideological. It was not into the kind of trading of favors that's common in other parties in Brazil at that time in its history. After Lula lost the 3rd time in '98, he went to the party and he said, I will be willing to run again, but I need to have more control over the campaign. It's going to be a Lula campaign and not a PT campaign. And the party conceded to that request, and he ran in 2002 with a conservative sort of center-right vice presidential candidate from the Liberal Party, who was actually evangelical. He made a broad coalition. He wrote a letter to the Brazilian people in the summer of 2002 in which he said that he would respect contracts and he would respect the debt that Brazil had at that time with the IMF. So he sort of accepted the macroeconomic framework that existed at that time, which was quite neoliberal, and he ran on a much broader coalition. And he changed his image. He talked about peace and love. He had nicely tailored suits. He trimmed his beard. He looked a lot more. He looked a lot less threatening,
less militant, more cuddly.
Exactly. He became cuddly, became kind of avuncular, softened his tone, and so he won in 2002. And I would say between 2002 and then 2006, when he gets reelected, he actually also shared the spoils of governance more. He brought in the PMDB to a greater extent. That's the kind of center-right party that's now against Dilma Rousseff, but they were his allies at that point. And I think one of the really interesting things that happens between the 2002 and 2006 election is that Lula loses a lot of his middle-class support between 2002 and 2006, partly because his economic policies were trying to target the poor. The rich were doing very well, the poor were doing quite well, and the middle class wasn't really getting that much. So they abandoned him to quite a large extent. But he picks up the unorganized poor, the people who are really on low incomes, and that's more than compensates for his loss of middle class support. But it's a very different sort of base of support for Worker Party presidents since the 2006 election. And you can pretty much go down the income scale. As you go down in income, you're more likely to find people who vote for PT presidential candidates.
Because there's no doubt, just as an addendum, that it seems very clearly established that, regardless of any, decisions or corruption or anything else, both the administrations of Lula and Dilma have certainly delivered in some ways for the extreme poor. Like, that support from the poor is not just symbolic. It's been very real. It's been real delivery that's made a difference in income, food security, and everything else. That has been a very successful and real part of both of their records, and probably particularly Lula. So what strikes me, though, as you say this, and which is fascinating, and I want you to kind of use this question to lead us into the present accusations and present crisis. But in the Western press, or in the American press, the European press, when Lula was first kind of emerging on the stage, and through, like as you say, his first term, and then there was a kind of broad period. I think Lula left office as probably the most popular politician in the world who actually faces democratic accountability. He was extraordinarily popular.
Right.
There was this idea that that was always reported that he started on the hard left, and now he's kind of he's center leftish. He's kind of a social democrat. People even compared him to sort of the Tony Blair, Bill Clinton vein, which I think is a stretch, to be fair to Lula, frankly.
Yeah.
But what struck me, especially as this scandal has kind of unfolded, was that part of quote unquote moderating in Brazilian politics is making peace and alliances with systemic corruption. So
Right.
in a certain sense, it's this inversion now where, all of a sudden, Lula and Dilma have been so corrupt, supposedly, but accepting and acquiescing to a certain degree of that was part and parcel of the first moderation image, which everybody wanted to praise him for. So if you could kind of riff on that
Yeah.
and then use that to open up what's happening now, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, I think what you bring up is a really important point, and it's why that there are people on the left in Brazil who feel really let down by the Workers' Party, who thought that the Workers' Party, because it was, at least in opposition, principled and ethical and talked about transforming Brazil and transforming the traditional corrupt way of doing politics in Brazil, they feel let down because rather than the PT really changing the political system, they were in fact changed by it, and they became more like all those other politicians and parties that they criticized when they were in opposition. But in some ways, I think it was, and I think Lula has a lot to do with this. Lula was never really highly ideological. He wasn't someone who was steeped in the history of the labor movement, for example, or about socialism. He was a very pragmatic negotiator. He was a good negotiator. He would get good deals for his members. And I think he was always that kind of trade union leader who would talk to everybody and seek a consensus.
Right.
And he had around him, when he was elected in 2002, a team of people like José Dirceu, who was his chief of staff, and Palocci, who was his finance minister, who were also extremely powerful, extremely pragmatic, and oriented towards power. And they realized, we can maintain party discipline and we can be focused on program, but we know that all of these other parties are not.
Right.
And so we're going to have to play ball with them, and we're going to have to give them parts of the federal budget. We're going to have to give them ministries. And of course, I think there's pretty compelling evidence that they got involved in the same sorts of corruption that other parties and politicians have been involved in. So in a way, it was the price that they felt, I think, that they were willing to pay to change Brazil and to do some of the things that they did, which was, for example, this conditional cash transfer program, which lifted people out of poverty, the increasing access to university and technical education through a really big loan program loan and grant program to low-income students, affirmative action in the universities, trying to promote gender equality,
Right.
all of these things. So, in their minds, I think these pragmatic compromises were what they needed to do to deal with the reality of the Brazilian political system.
What are some of the specifics of some of these corruption allegations targeting Dilma and Lula, and how has the judiciary, it seems, again, like there's probably some legitimacy to some of these charges, and if you could, outline them, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mm-hmm.
It does seem at the very least that, as an example, leaking conversations that are part of an investigation between Lula and Dilma in an effort to embarrass them is, at the very least questionable.
Exactly.
And even as, they have been targeted, all of the major political parties are implicated in this. So, I guess
Exactly.
play out that contradiction there.
Well, you're absolutely right. We saw this spectacle on Sunday of the members of the lower house voting to impeach Dilma. And the guy presiding over that session was Eduardo Cunha, who's been charged by the attorney general of receiving a $5 million bribe to get a contract from Petrobras, the state-owned oil company, and of also having undeclared bank accounts in Swiss banks with millions of dollars in them. So,
Right.
this is not a spectacle in which clean politicians are impeaching a corrupt one. There's corruption is endemic in Congress. What the car wash investigations have revealed, investigation led by a judge called Sergio Moro in Curitiba, what they found was that, and what they're alleging, is that big that had contracts with Petrobras would routinely over invoice or overbill for those contracts. The kickbacks would then go to executives in the oil company, but they would also be funneled to politicians for campaigns. And if you read the Brazilian press, you'd be forgiven for thinking he was the only party benefiting from this scheme. But this was a very, very widespread scheme and involved a lot of parties in the coalition.
Professor,
about 50 people.
I'm sorry. Have you moved or anything? Because your connection was excellent, and we've just gotten a bit choppy.
Okay, I think I moved away from the mic there.
Oh yes, get back to the mic, please. Thank you.
Is that better?
That's significantly better. Yes, great.
Okay,
go right ahead.
So there's about 50 Congress who have been implicated in this car wash investigation in this kickback scheme, and that includes of the lower house. It includes Michel Temer. The thing is, Dilma, there's no evidence that is produced yet that Dilma, benefited from any of this corruption, but right. She was chairman of the board on Petrobras during Lula's second term. So, what her critics allege is that there's a sin of omission, if not commission, in terms of her role in Petrobras, an oil company, but that's not actually the subject of the impeachment charge.
Yeah, what exactly? Because that's the other kind of odd thing about it with regards to Dilma. What is the impeachment charge against her, and how does she sort of get dragged into what, as you already outlined? First of all the parties are implicated. Mm-hmm. In fact, it seems on the face of it, and again, not to obviously, I sort of have a personal soft spot for Lula. That's clear, and I have a kind of more general sympathy to the Workers' Party. But, the evidence against Lula might be there, but it's certainly more tenuous than it is for many other leading players in this, where it seems a lot more clear in terms of, money in accounts and things actually moved. But with Dilma, it seems like, right. There's literally nothing there. It just... it's as if they got the Republicans had the votes together to just impeach Obama because they don't like him.
Yeah, I think it's not a very robust case. You do get constitutional lawyers saying that this is an impeachable offense, but just to point out how paradoxical the whole thing is, she's accused of signing orders that delayed payment banks so that the fiscal deficit looked lower than it actually was. This is something, these same orders have been signed by Michel Temer, the vice president, who's scheduled to take over from her as an interim president once the Senate accepts these impeachment proceedings. So I think it looks like a double standard. It looks like selective invocation of the law. And in fact, these are common practices in mayorships and governorships. They've been done by previous presidents. The jurisprudence that declares that these are unconstitutional acts is very recent. And we have to remember, too, in November of 2014, right after her reelection, there were people calling for impeachment then. Right. They didn't have a reason for it. They just were upset that she had won reelection, and this was the fourth consecutive Workers' Party presidential victory. So I think it was something that was convenient. And what was noticeable about the Sunday vote in the lower house is that almost nobody voting yes mentioned these pedaladas, as they're called, or these sort of creative bookkeeping acts of Dilma. They talked about the Petrobras corruption. They talked about morality. They talked about their families. They talked about, right. How the country was ungovernable and how the economy had to improve. I mean, it was so diffuse that everything was invoked almost. Very rarely the actual impeachment charges were mentioned. Well,
that's actually brings me to a couple of interconnected things here too, because as I say, Lula left office, I believe it was in 2012 or 2010. I don't remember the specific year.
2010, yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
And he left, as I say, as with one of the most, I think, the highest approval rating of anybody in the world who was actually, he wasn't Gaddafi, right? Like, these were real polls. Right. Everybody loved him. He was incredibly popular. And, Dilma, who has this fascinating personal background, but did not have an electoral political background, he kind of handpicked her. She didn't have the same kind of charisma that he had, but she's obviously, very smart, very capable. And with his stamp of approval, she was elected and then reelected on her own merits in 2014. And so it seems like, one track that's happened here is that the Brazilian economy has just stalled, and that always creates general anger. So that's kind of so those tracks of, okay, you don't have a president who's as charismatic or persuasive. The economy stalled, and then the third track seems to be that the level of opposition from the media to the opposition parties to the judiciary seems to kind of, it sort of seems to indicate we could never win. It looks like Lula might run again in 2008 and 18. And we're not, like, we just have to stop them somehow. And Lula, ironically, for a guy who, really moderated to get himself where he was and with all of that entailed, he's out speaking to the international press saying, like, look, this is a kind of old style Latin American coup. And almost as if the lesson after all of this time in power, and even in today's modern circumstances, that the old oligarchic dynamics are still at play, and even a moderation as much as the Workers' Party and the delivery across sectors is still not going to work, because fundamentally the elites don't want us to govern. And that seems like what the fault lines have turned into.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the contrast between the really rough time that Dilma's having and the much easier time that Lula had, I think it's based on three limitations of Workers' Party rule. I guess the fourth could be there is misogyny in society as well.
Sure.
And I think that's a factor that plays against Dilma in the same way that it plays against Hillary Clinton, say, in this system. But the three limitations are, one is that I think Lula personalized the party in a way that probably wasn't healthy. So rather than a competitive election inside the party, what you had in 2010 was him as this very popular president saying, I'm going to pick this woman who's my chief of staff, who's never won an election to anything, and she's going to be my successor. And I think that sort of went against the tradition of the Workers' Party, which was to be programmatic, to be internally democratic, and to be more about to be a party that was kind of bigger than any individual in it. So people started talking in 2010 about Lulismo or Lulaism, as opposed to PTism or the workers. So the person started to become more important than the party, and that's a limitation, I think. And you can see it in the lack of other candidates. So Lula's the only plausible candidate for them in 2018. The second limitation, I think, is that they did help the poor, but they helped the poor mostly through mechanisms that increase the purchasing power of the poor. So increasing access to credit, the social transfers. So you got a social income if you were really poor, access to training and education that lowered the skills gap in the labor market. What they weren't able to do as much is structurally transform the country. So, for example, improve the quality of education, improve the quality of healthcare, provide good public transportation. So as purchasing power was going up amongst the lower income, and you got the growth of what the Brazilians call Class C, between sort of 1,000 and 4,000 reais. They call it a middle class, but it's really, we'd probably understand it as a working class. You didn't get the corresponding improvements in public goods that would have made people's lives better. So you had more people buying cars and worse traffic. You had crime was bad because public security wasn't keeping up with the rates of crime. You had sort of unlivable situations for a lot of commuters in cities. And that was a big limitation. And I think the final limitation is that when they went in 2006 and they set that pattern of getting most of their votes from the low income, it worked electorally. But what it meant was a lot of the shapers of opinion in institutions like the judiciary, in institutions like the media, to a lesser extent in universities. There's still a lot of supporters of the Workers' Party in universities, but outside of that, most middle-class people are anti-Workers' Party. It set a dynamic in which they could win elections, but they didn't have a big cross-class coalition that could make the case for their legitimacy throughout the whole society. And you got this polarization. And if you're depending mostly on the bottom half of the income distribution, you can win the votes. When it comes time to debates like these things about the impeachment, the loudest voices in these discussions are often the anti-Workers' Party voices. And you've got an electorate in Brazil, 60% of the people don't identify with any party. And wow. The Workers' Party has the highest party identification in the electorate, but it's only about 10, 11%. And it's probably actually, that's, a little while ago, it's probably fallen since then. And they have to deal with a Congress which has about 28 different parties. So I think that lack of a cross-class coalition is really, in terms of their electoral support, means that they're constantly getting hammered by the media, by the mainstream media. And I think the judiciary as well has been, as you point out, with these leaks, it's been highly selective in the information that it's leaked, and it's tended to target the Workers' Party, even though the corruption is much more generalized and systematic.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, as we move towards the final sort of question here, but just to underlie that, it seems like in these two sort of failings of the Workers' Party, and again, I mean, obviously, there's a major problem in terms of the way the judiciary, other political parties, and the media have acted and are acting. I think arguably they're seriously undermining the democratic credibility of Brazil in some respects. But it's very interesting that in the failures to kind of keep a broad-based coalition, and then in the kind of failures to address more structural deficits, there isn't the kind of structural like there's people's lives are better, which you can never underestimate, but there isn't. Sure. It's like, because Dilma's had to do austerity, and then right. And when you cleaned up, we did a report on what happened during the World Cup, and certainly the Workers' Party government was quite brutal in enforcing the edicts of the World Cup, and that's contradictory on every level of the kind of traditional worker party ethos. So right. By not doing those kind of deeper, more durable jobs, ironically, that wasn't pragmatic because it set the stage for its own crisis in a certain way.
Absolutely. And one way to look at this impeachment, and it doesn't jive with the sort of gulp or coup rhetoric, is that this is an inside job. This is the PT's own coalition partner, the PMDB, deciding to dump them and to get rid of the president. And they're doing it very well because the PT has been so dependent on these guys. It's a bit like House of Cards. Michel Temer, the vice president, is leading the coalition in the lower house to vote against his own president. But I think you could fault the Workers' Party on environmental issues and indigenous issues as well. When you saw how the Dilma Rousseff government reacted to the Belo Monte controversy, the big dam in the Amazon, and these structural transformations are hard. I mean, for example, they could have tried to change the tax system. Brazilians, the overall level of taxation in the economy is high, but the highest tax rate is 27%. There's very little taxation of wealth, land, and property. They could have tried to take that on. They could have tried structural reforms. Those were difficult to do, and I suppose you could say that they're paying the price for that in a way. I mean, under Lula, it was very significant that not only poverty decreased, but income inequality, as measured by the Gini coefficient, came down. And that was really significant because that hadn't happened in a long time in Brazil. And Brazil is still one of the most unequal countries in the world when it comes to the distribution of income. But what did not get looked at during that period was, of course, inequality of wealth. And this is why Thomas Piketty's book is very relevant to Brazil, because wealth inequality, I mean, we don't really know, we don't really have the statistics, but wealth inequality may well be greater even than income inequality. And there are lots of ways for the wealthy to hang on to their wealth in Brazil. And, that was something that the Workers' Party just wasn't able or willing to take on. And I think that's where a really interesting debate on the left is happening, is sort of what could the Workers' Party have done that they didn't do? How much allowance do you have to give for the realities of the Brazilian political system? And I think there are some people who are a little bit starry-eyed who say that the Workers' Party could have absolutely transformed Brazil. And we have to remember, Lula got something like 60% of the vote typically in his 2 elections for president in the second round. His party never got more than about 30% of the vote. Mm-hmm. So they were coming into Congress where they had maybe 20% of the seats in both houses, and they had to transform those 20% into a majority in the Congress. That's how difficult the system is. Right. So I think you do have to make some allowances for how that system works.
Absolutely. I mean, and as a final question, and this is the sort of generic, impossible to answer question, but take it in any direction you want to take it in. What's the sort of general what happens next from, the most kind of immediate to even the relevancy of that conversation inside the left in Brazil? I mean, whatever you think is most relevant in terms of what's going to kind of come out of this.
Sure. Yeah, I watched that vote on Sunday, and there was a kind of climate of a big party, when the 342nd deputy voted to impeach. There's this sense that this is it's going to be a big change in Brazilian politics. I think it's just one little step in an unfolding drama. It's not going to be easy for any government right now in Brazil to govern, whether it's led by Dilma Rousseff or Michel Temer, because the country is so polarized. And it's also paralyzed. The government isn't able to do the kinds of reforms that it needs to do to get out of recession. Now you're looking at maybe a second year in a row where the economy contracts by almost 4%. This is a big crisis for Brazil. But I think in some ways it wouldn't be terrible from the point of view of the left and the Workers' Party. They're not the same thing, but to go out of power at this point, to not have their president in, because they could rethink what their values are. They could prepare to run as an opposition party in 2018, and they could sort of have the kind of moment that the Labour Party's been having here in Britain with Jeremy Corbyn as its leader. Corbyn is not really a plausible prime minister, I don't think, in anybody's mind, but he's brought in a huge sort of grassroots resurgence of people joining the party and remembering what they were really what they were interested in before Blair and New Labour sort of made them a kind of copy of the Conservatives. So I think that it wouldn't be entirely unhealthy for the Workers' Party to be out and to sort of rejuvenate itself, but then also for a really ample debate to happen, because it's not clear that the party is going to stay together. You may have people saying, well, you've already had a lot of defections, but you may have more, especially after the municipal elections that are coming up in October. You may have people like Tarso Genro from Rio Grande do Sul saying, this party, it's not going to work anymore as a vehicle for our aspirations. We have to found something else. So that could happen.
Fascinating. Professor Anthony Pereira, I appreciate your time immensely. And Professor Pereira is the director of the Brazil Institute at King's College in London. Thank you so much, Professor. I hope we have a chance to talk again sometime soon and kind of continue following what's happening even beyond the crisis point.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. We are going to get to the fun half of the program where you can join us at 646-257-3920. There's, something going on with the computer. 646-257-3920. JustCoffee.coop this month. Get 30% off with promo code MRSpring16. One word, MRSpring16. We've got a lot for you in the fun half, so catch us there. 646-257-3920. The IMs are open. Majority Report kickback, become a member, all of the good things. It's really fantastic. Welcome back. On the fun half of the program, I'm Michael Brooks, joined by mega producer Matt Leck.
What's up?
Kelly Carey not here today. Let's read some IMs. Ito, I was wondering what the F was going on in Brazil. Oh, gotcha. Bertle Mech. So y'all, AJS already appeared to get to this in IM yesterday, but I have a proposal. We should abolish states because federalism is bunk. There, boom. There's an extent to which federalism has been the number one obstacle to large-scale social projects, and I'm tired of it. What do y'all think? And would you tinker with it? It's something I've never talked about. I guess I'm open to having that conversation. I mean, clearly, there's disjuncture between states and progress. But
I feel like we might have some other steps before we get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, we are a different country, right? Like there are those differences are rooted in real geography and real history. And you see this in the European Union. I think, and I don't know. I don't necessarily always prefer the most highly centralized answer, but regardless, yeah, that's a very long off thing.
I would like more like internationalist, the United States as a whole, like paying respect to international laws and those sorts of things before we start that, maybe.
Yeah, I feel you. Like, I love being a Coloradan, but I love the cachet that comes with that. Just the sad sack man of Athens at the trial of Socrates who thinks his worth is tied up in where he's from. I would gladly erase the distinction between myself and a Wyomingan if it meant large-scale federal programs are possible. Well, it's very big of you. Michael, if someone has 2 boxes of rat poison and uses them to kill a bunch of people, do we hold the manufacturers responsible? Your claim that Bernie's vote on the gun bill makes no sense when the guns are manufactured and sold legally and the person passed the background check. If you want to argue these guns shouldn't be legal, I'm right there with you. But to say that everyone along the chain that allowed the law should be held accountable for the unpredictability actions of the last guy, I see no legal principle for you to apply to. P.S. If I send you a reply after this, you'll see the whole message again and a new one at the end. That's how you and Sam missed the follow-up IMs for people who've already sent one. Well, that's a very didactic message. Look, I'm not going to sort of pretend that I know more about the gun bill that Bernie voted against than I do. But the problem was that it's not as simple as the rat poison analogy, because you're basically talking about products that are dangerous products, such as tobacco, that have been subject to class action suits. Gun manufacturers have an unparalleled immunity from that type of legal accountability. And that law was addressing that. I disagree with Bernie's vote on that. And you certainly could have carved in exceptions and made sure that it didn't hurt some local gun buyer gun seller in Vermont necessarily. But obviously you have a major domestic arms industry who does operate with a great deal of recklessness, even if it is quote unquote, within sort of bonds of the law. But, bring this back up to Sam, because that's my sense of it. But I think Sam will have a better explanation of that one than me, to be honest with you. Dennis at I am. Never forget. Okay. Never forget 7-Eleven. Never forget. Look. All right, let's get to that. Donald Trump was in Buffalo. Every time you drop Trump in one of these like New York City, I'm just like, man, Trump in Buffalo, that's going to be scary and hilarious and awesome and really, frankly, tremendous. And he had a message for everybody about what you don't forget as a New Yorker and as an American. Let's listen.
I think what I want to do is I want to talk just for a second. I wrote this out, and it's very close to my heart because I was down there, and I watch our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center right after it came down. And I saw the greatest people I've ever seen in action. I saw the bravest people I've ever seen, including the construction workers, including every person down there. That's what New York Value's about. And so I wrote out a little something, and I'd like to talk about the New York values that we all know so well. The values that make us love this state despite its problems. We love this state. We know it's going to come back. If I'm president, it's going to come back so fast you won't even believe it. You watch.
Where's my...
Hey, what happened?
So, Donald Trump doesn't miss a beat there. He completely misses it. Yeah, we can play that again.
I think what I want to do is I want to talk just for a second. I wrote this out, and it's very close to my heart because I was down there, and I watch our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center, right at...
I love it. I want to see like people just sort of like start acting like Trump, like imagine like a Japanese politician. Like, I want to mention what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the 1950s. It was terrible. Donald Trump, once again, even with something as little and as stupid as that, I don't have anything for it. What could I add to that?
Do you suspect that it could be planned?
Why?
Because I just feel like he might think that he can do that. Just like, oh, this will get their attention. Like, it's basically, I just do like the Lion Ted thing, how he misspelled
Lion Ted?
Lyen apostrophe.
I mean,
like,
look, it's apostrophe there. It's fantastic. Check this out. Hey, Corey.
I guess the point is if you just act like you meant it, then...
Hey, Corey, go kick that reporter in the balls, and I'm going to get up here. 7-Eleven. Check it out. It's fantastic. If you want to listen to a guy who makes Donald Trump look like Gandhi, I can help you. Let's listen to Rudy Giuliani on Chris Cuomo talking about why he endorses Donald Trump but is not part of the Donald Trump campaign.
It doesn't make sense to me that you are going to vote for Trump, but you won't endorse him.
Okay, so I'll endorse him. I mean, but I'm not part of the campaign.
But what's the difference? That's what I don't understand. Why don't you say, I'm Rudy Giuliani. I mean a lot in New York politics.
Okay,
I endorse Donald Trump.
Okay, I'm Rudy Giuliani. I mean a lot in New York politics. I endorse Donald Trump, but I'm not part of the campaign.
Well, I don't understand. What does that last part mean?
What does that mean is I'm not a surrogate. They haven't asked me to do anything. I'm not involved in the campaign. I'm not called upon to give advice except a few times when I've volunteered it. I'm not part of the campaign apparatus. I don't want people to think I am.
So how's that different than Mayor de Blasio saying, I endorse Hillary Clinton?
I think he's part of her organization. I'm not. But I'm willing to accept. If you want to interpret that as an endorsement.
Well, you were really strict about it the last time.
I'm really, you can interpret it as an endorsement, but I'm just not part of the campaign.
Okay, Rudy Giuliani, much more clear, much more articulate when he is fear-mongering or making bigoted statements or playing out his bizarre, childish, racially driven resentment against President Obama. But all of a sudden, when he endorses Donald Trump, who, to be fair to Rudy, in a Saturday Night Live skit from many years ago, where Rudy Giuliani was dressed, I believe, as a Rockette or a older Upper East Side lady, was in a perfume shop. And Donald Trump, appearing in the sketch as himself, very rudely stuck his head in between Rudy Giuliani's fake breasts. Here it is.
You know, you're really beautiful. And a woman that looks like that has to have her own special scent.
Oh, thank you. Maybe you could tell me what you think of this scent.
He's about to go in.
I like that.
This may be the best of all.
He's about to go in.
Oh, you dirty boy, you. Oh.
Up.
Donald, I thought you were a gentleman.
So I think that's the first time in electoral history that a Republican frontrunner was endorsed by a prominent, also neo-fascist mayor who had participated in a variety show sketch where he sexually harassed the other one who was dressed as a woman. I don't think that's happened before. Also, Rudy, interesting woman impression. It's moments like that make me think we're not going to survive as a species.
Now, I don't know. What do I know about it? All I know is what's on the internet.
I mean, look. What do I know about it?
It was great perfume. What can I say?
Yeah, it was great perfume. I mean, look, the people at Saturday Night Live wanted to do a sketch. It was a great sketch. It was a funny sketch. I'd only do funny sketches.
I see a man in drag. I think I want to put my face there.
Yeah, I want to do it. Yeah. Look, it's funny. Basic rules of comedy. It's all just coming apart. Okay. On the complete opposite end of the human spectrum, today is Election Day in New York. Donald Trump's going to crush Ted Cruz, and that will hold with it a sort of perverse satisfaction. Actually, you know what? Before we get to the other end of the human scale, let's finish with all of the disgustingness. And we got to get to John Kasich, who, like all other kind of supposed moderates, is in a bizarre way. Like at this point, he's more delusional than Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. Like theoretically, yes, in a contested convention, sure. But obviously, if it's not going to be Trump or Cruz, which I'm almost certain it will be one of those two guys, and I actually do think it'll be Trump. It's not going to be the guy who can't beat them anywhere besides his home state, which he camped out in. But for some reason, John Kasich is still pushing away. He's in New York, and I don't know what it is about being in New York. Everybody knows John Kasich is a dick, but wow. He really allows himself to exercise. I mean, we saw last week, he went up to the Hasids, and he was like, hey, you guys read the Torah? I like that Abraham. He's a big guy. You know about him?
What's your favorite subject in school?
What's your favorite subject in shul? That's how y'all pronounce it. Do you know that? And now John Kasich, who is at a New York City deli. There's also footage of John Kasich, which we will not play because it's a little gross. And I feel him because these pickles are good. Just shoving pickles in his mouth. Just fucking like chowing. And a New York reporter kind of reasonably asked him, like, dude, you don't win anything. So why are you here? Although they didn't ask it in such a funny way. But the point got across. John Kasich did not appreciate having reality intrude on his campaign.
Governor, if you get to the convention in Cleveland and you have only won Ohio, do you think
there'll be no if?
There's
no if in there. There'll be when. And listen, at the end of the day, I think the Republican Party wants to pick somebody who actually can win in the fall.
But if you've only won Ohio,
can I finish? I think I'm answering Mike the question the way I want to answer it. You want to answer it?
No.
Here, let me hold that.
You're the candidate.
Let me ask you. What do you think?
I think you should answer the question.
Governor, Debbie Wasserman Schultz said your comments like.
He's going after the grumpy old man vote.
And it's sad. Frankly, it's a mess. I mean, look. That is one of the most, I mean, it's annoying, but like that shows you that guy's patience level. Because that is on the grand scheme of questions. I mean, are you kidding me? That's not, how do you feel about possibly getting the nomination even though you've pretty much never won anything? And, well, let me tell you, I blah, blah, blah. Not like, no, we are. I've been doing my creative visualization techniques, and you can get the fuck out of my face. Where's another pickle?
It's interesting how many times he must have answered that question, and you can tell that really what he wants to do is just repeat the script that he says every time he's asked it. And when the reporter like tries to stick in there and say, hey, you're doing that thing where you say this BS answer that you've said a million times that doesn't really answer the question, then Kasich cannot tolerate that. Like, I need to say what I need to say, man.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I am. And if you let me say it, I'd repeat my talking point. Do people remember? I mean, I don't remember, but people know of when Abby Hoffman, as part of a guerrilla prank, threw money in the pit of Wall Street, and the traders scrambled for it. A historical piece of guerrilla theater. Well, this wasn't as good, but it wasn't bad. Protesters protesting Hillary Clinton's mega fundraiser the other day that was hosted by George Clooney. They threw dollars at Hillary Clinton's motorcade, taking her to the fundraiser. Now, a normal person might think, oh, okay, they're protesting the role of money in politics. Or, oh, all right, that's kind of clever. Or, that's a waste of coffee money. Or, they could have become members of the Majority Report with that. Or, it's a little obnoxious. But there is something that non-normal people thought. And these non-normal people are Hillary Clinton supporters who have apparently, like, short-circuited would be too generous. So Peter Dow, who I've seen his work in the past, and, he's advised candidates that I've supported. Doesn't seem like a bad guy. Supporting Hillary Clinton has maybe invited in a parallel dimension Peter Dow version who is like beyond out of his fucking mind. And this is what he wrote in the Blue Nation Review about this prank. Hillary Clinton is one of the most admired and accomplished women in the world, the first in history of the viable shot at the U.S. presidency. What does it say about the culture of Bernie's campaign? In the space of a week, his supporters have used the term Democratic whore. I believe it was a Dr. Singer who is a lifelong advocate of single payer at a rally, and I believe he said corporate whore, which is a very old phrase, or Democratic whore, old phrase denoting politicians who sell themselves to special interests. Now, in the context of this campaign, not good phraseology. Yeah, he wasn't making a gender point. You can make a bigger gender point and say maybe we should retire the term whore as a term because of where it comes from, and I might be with you. But nice old single-payer advocate making a misogynist attack on Hillary Clinton while talking about his life's devotion to single-payer? No. Fuck out of here. So that's the first ridiculous point. They chanted, hey, hey, ho, ho, Hillary Clinton has got to go, and threw dollar bills at her. Bernie and his campaign have done their level best to paint Hillary as a corrupt politician who is, quote, bought and paid for. The unseemly implications of that attack line are becoming more and more apparent in recent days. Taken separately, one might rationalize terms like corporate whore and chants like, hey, hey, ho, ho, Hillary Clinton must go. And actions like throwing $1 bills at her, taken collectively, is increasingly difficult to avoid the gendered implications of this coded language. I'm sorry, my eyes have actually retracted into my forehead. I couldn't read that for a second. Let me finish this. The responsibility of this toxic culture is Bernie's. The responsibility of this toxic culture is Bernie's. Wow! Bernie's systemic character assault against Hillary Clinton has made his campaign less about something and more against something. So, let's get this straight. Hey, hey, ho, ho, which is actually another term that I'm willing to retire because it sounds lame, which has been used in every single protest since I have no idea. I mean, maybe like when Socrates was getting put on trial by the Athenians, they were saying, hey, ho, ho, hey, ho, ho, Socrates has got to go.
Yeah, we need to update.
Yeah, we need to update and we need to get rid of drums. And I'm totally down with retiring the phrase whore because I don't like the gender implications of it. But corporate whore, which is a phrase that has been used certainly to describe Bill Clinton, hey, hey, ho, ho, that is a protest trope forever, and symbolically throwing dollar bills to protest the stifling role that money has in politics. All of that is a grand, subtle conspiracy sanctioned by Bernie Sanders. Clearly what he was subtly doing when he was out campaigning in Brownsville yesterday, which is one of the poorest neighborhoods in New York, and inspecting public housing over this past week here. He was sending this subtle signal that really this is a giant, grand Borat prank to call Hillary Clinton a stripper. Usually in the format of these things, after breaking that down, I would add that that is one of the dumbest, most delusional, most actually genuinely like go check yourself in and get help things I've ever read in my life. But I feel like it's an insult to the audience's intelligence to even say that. And Peter Dow gets fucking paid to write this. And this is sanctioned surrogacy around the Hillary Clinton campaign. Bernie Sanders is running on nothing besides personal attacks on Hillary Clinton. Let's go back to pre-elementary school. Bernie Sanders supports single-payer health care. Bernie Sanders wants an aggressive approach to climate change, and Bernie Sanders wants to definancialize the American economic system. He disagrees policy-wise with Hillary Clinton. And he suggests that part of the reason that they have certain policy perspectives is because just as President Obama himself wrote in The Audacity of Hope in 2007, his reliance on 1% fundraisers influenced the tone of his worldview. And it was tempting to make people struggling an abstraction when you were surrounded by people enjoying the benefits of the system. It's not about somebody's moral failing. It's about a systemic problem that anybody who has any basic situational awareness or who doesn't directly benefit from the problem understands. And again, reading this, I don't actually know if Peter Dowd like legitimately is off or out of his mind. But the use of these charges of misogyny in such a, I mean, this isn't even disingenuous. Again, this is just off the map, insane way to attack the campaign of Bernie Sanders is obviously ludicrous in and of itself, but does a profound disservice to the real issue of systemic sexism and misogyny in this country and in this globe. Anytime I have ever seen actual sexism targeted at Hillary Clinton by anybody, I have disavowed it. That's a no-brainer. But this is fucking stupid. And that might even be too harsh or too generous, depending on the mental state of whoever wrote it.
It's funny how they have these official propaganda mouthpiece organs. And so like I'm not saying there aren't people that make arguments this stupid on the Bernie side, but they aren't being paid.
They are not advisors. You can go on Twitter and YouTube and find people saying dumb, horrible things about Hillary who support Bernie. You can find people on YouTube and Twitter saying that the earth is flat. You can find people saying that there's a secret intergalactic conspiracy of lizards that they're all a part of. You can find people saying that Beyonce is a member of the Illuminati. But yes, what you don't find is a Bernie Sanders spokesperson or sanctioned operative saying, you know, when Hillary Clinton said shouted and when they said tone and then they mentioned Brooklyn, that's actually the call for a Holocaust. Because really the Clinton campaign is a profound covert operation of secret covert anti-Semitism. I mean, unreal how stupid / crazy, how stupid / delusional, how insane / demented all this is.
It gives the small-minded something to talk about. Like, not that there can't be valid criticisms of coded language, but playing it like this is just an embarrassment. And
it's just an embarrassment.
It's just meant to be a distraction.
Exactly. And that's what, yeah, well, whatever. We're not going to get into that. Okay, let's get to a quick phone call. You're calling from a 504 area code. Who are you? What's on your mind?
Hey, this is Robert in New Orleans. So,
hey, man.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're all right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So, I'm sorry because I listened to the show on my phone, so I haven't, when I've been on hold. Did you talk about the lawsuit yet, or what's the deal with that? Because how I understand it, they're going to have another hearing in an hour, and if that lawsuit succeeds, then people are going to have their provisional ballots counted. Is that true?
I think that's possible. I've seen it. There's a lawsuit about people's ballots here in New York City for the primary today. I'm not up on it, to be honest with you. I was prepping primarily for the interview when that kind of came out. But we can, and it's also developing, but we can look into it. And I mean, what's the latest on that other than the fact that it's happening, Matt? Do you know?
I don't know, but we probably have some listeners that are paying attention. So.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just not. I know that it's happening, but I don't know the latest iteration of it. So let me look it up, or other people will call in about it. I'm sorry about that, man.
No problem, man. Well, if it's even halfway true, I mean, there's no reason why, if you're in New York right now, you shouldn't be casting a provisional ballot. Then.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
It's obviously not
Absolutely. Yeah. Though, yeah, I'm not sure about this story. There's a lot more I need to get into on it. Okay, man.
Cool.
Thanks so
man.
much. Thanks so much for the call. If you have a chance to look that up, there's been too much kind of flying with it today. It's a little bit hard sometimes on election days to kind of keep track of what is and isn't happening. All right, let me get through some more IMs. Or do you have something up?
Looks like Jordan Charlton, who I believe is the Young Turks political reporter. I'll confirm that in a second. But this was from 11:51 a.m. New York primary lawsuit update. New hearing at 2 p.m. Eastern. Election justice says if judge rules in its favor, all provisional ballots cast today would be counted.
So cast that provisional ballot. That's the main takeaway if you're voting in New York City.
Yeah, and that was Jordan Chariton of the Young Turks.
Okay. Omar Shami. Matt, you said you have researched UFOs and were unimpressed with the evidence. Frankly, considering that you were unaware of the Belgian wave, 1988 to 1991, I am thoroughly, quote, unimpressed, with your research. After 3 decades of skeptically as opposed to cynically researching the subject, I know unconventional flying objects are real. That is crafts with insane performance envelopes being able to hover perfectly still, then shoot off like a bullet, all while not making any noise. Not because of any single smoking gun, but from a preponderance of evidence. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean aliens. I think it is within the realm of possibility that we're the only life in the universe, as doubtful as that is. But I think the implications of some human organization, presumably the U.S. military, making quantum leaps in technology are almost as profound.
Yeah, well, 2 things. One, I will see that evidence if you can send it in. Like, I would like to actually have good evidence that these crafts exist.
Majority and second of all, reporters at gmail.com.
Second of all, it is a huge leap to say it's aliens inside.
Well, okay. All right. So look at people coming together here. Chriso, Google fun internet drinking game. Google any Michael Brooks interview, scrub it, and play a random part of the video. Drink if Michael is talking. Ooh, that's not very nice. Warning: if you're not home, pick a designated driver, whether Michael is interviewer or interviewee. Damn. In the sticks. OMG, y'all! This isn't from the Onion. Guest opinion. Great fall. What is this? Why I support Donald Trump for president. But who is this dude?
What's his name?
don't see his name. It's a great fault. I guess it's Donald J. Trump is a man of action, basing decisions on factual information. He surrounds himself with analytical advice experts and always has
like Ben Carson.
Alternative plans for successful outcomes. No misleading political double talk.
Here's some facts.
Here's some facts for you. If you want, a lot of people talk about facts, but there's a variety of facts. Hey, baby, where are you going? Let me holler at you. Sets a wonderful example as a respected Christian family man, a businessman with a firm belief and trust in God.
Yeah, this isn't real.
Yeah, I don't feel like, I don't know. It's probably not real. DRR at IM. What's going on in Brazil is Argentine political scientist Magdalena Lopez recently noted is Nepolism, a new form of coup under the guise of parliamentary legitimacy without the military. So to call it old style is not accurate. The model is set by the parliamentary coup against Fernando Lugo in 2012 in Paraguay, right? Which was not covered by international press and received little criticism other than a short suspension from a regional trade bloc. The right wing in Brazil took note, says Lopez. Also glad you got Pereira recently a president of the U.S.-based Brazilian Studies Association, which at its recent meeting that I attended a few weeks ago passed a resolution warning against using corruption as an excuse to destroy democracy in Brazil, as was done in 1964, a military coup in Brazil. AJS, a lot of young people at my polling station today, so hope it will be close. Peter Dow was in the Falangist Lebanese forces during the time of Shatila and Sabra massacres. Really? Wow.
He's litigious on this point.
So I don't think he's a good dude. Oh, he's I don't know anything about. I literally just know that Peter Dow exists, and he wrote one of the dumbest columns I've ever seen in my life. But I don't know anything about him. The responsibility of this toxic culture is Bernie's. Does this guy have a copy editor? What a horrible sentence. Wait. You mean to tell me there aren't lizard people in high positions in the deep state?
He's not gonna employ a copy editor though. There's only so much Clinton money that goes around.
Right. You're gonna have to do your own copy. All right. Now, what I would say that Bernie himself is responsible for the toxic culture. What's that? Crime bill. How about you shut the... you should be on your knees. Nick Crabb. Great show, guys. Why doesn't Bernie push back on Clinton attack that he doesn't know how to break out the bank? Seems to me like he dropped the ball early in the debate when Hillary threw the Daily News article in his face.
I agree he could answer that better.
Could have definitely answered it better, but I would have answered it in the sort of similar way of like, that's actually not on me. It's the question of enforcing the wind down. And we could also talk about any number of other policy steps, whether it's a modern version of Glass-Steagall. I'm happy to have that conversation. My question is why you don't support robust mechanisms to save the American economy from systemic risk, and indeed the global one. AJS saw a great panel last night with Bhaskar Sankar and Sarah Leonard, who both completely destroyed Bernie or bust. Chris Labaco, I highly suggest a new song from YG and Nipsey Hussle. It's called F Donald Trump for the win. If Rudy Giuliani didn't endorse Donald Trump, we would have to hear about how Rudy dresses up like a woman and Donald makes him do whatever he wants. G-Beard, Bernie or bust. Andy Kindler, stop unfairly criticizing Sam Harris. Oh, God. Oh, you're just trying to terrorize us. Mr. Fan, really beautiful interview, Michael. It really makes me think about Brazil, but I'm not sure the Workers' Party losing is a good choice when livelihoods are at stake. However, I do think Jeremy would be a good PM. I forgot his name, but at least it wasn't Republican in opposition. Keep up the good work, Mike. Thank you. Fair point about Bernie, too. Bernie for president. Theme to Darwin. 7-Eleven was a part-time job. Okay. Bernie Sanders this is a big day. If you're in New York and you support Bernie, which obviously we do, I do, believe Matt does. Of course, Matt does. You support Bernie, right, Matt? I mean, that's been pretty obvious.
Yes.
You got to go out and make it happen. You need to vote. So, and this is a great reminder of the spirit of Bernie Sanders' campaign and what's animated it and why it really has been, no matter what the scenario, a tremendous success and an unbelievable contribution to American and through America global political life. Inequality, the climate crisis, systemic inequality, corruption, undue influence, wealth disparity. I mean, these are generationally and multi-generational defining issues. And they have been coming on the map through the Fight for 15, through Occupy, through any number of different sort of outbursts. But Bernie Sanders in this campaign has created a framework in the context of a presidential election to forward those issues to the front. And all of the issues that we talk about, whether it's systemic misogyny, whether it's systemic racism, whether it's criminal justice issues, are not going to be solved without a serious program on inequality. They won't be solved by dealing with inequality alone. Of course not, because they're separate and distinct tracks and issues. But inequality is the common denominator for everything. And I've said this many times. Criticize Bernie, criticize anybody for not speaking perfectly on any number of issues. But we don't have anybody bringing the class dimension into the center of American politics. No one is representing that. And he has done that, and through that provided a movement, a broader critique, and tremendous momentum, and he deserves our immense appreciation and our votes. Let's listen to him last night in Long Island City talking about the awakening that has propelled his campaign.
All over this country, people are beginning to look at the status quo, and they are understanding that it is not acceptable and that it is not working for them. They are looking around them and they're asking, how does it happen that we have more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth? How does it happen that for 30 years the middle class of this country has been shrinking and trillions of dollars in wealth have gone from working families to the top 1/10 of 1%? How does it happen that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? How does it happen that we are the only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave? How does it happen that we are the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people? Why is it, they ask, that our infrastructure is crumbling, that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country? People are looking around them and they're saying, this is not what America is supposed to be about. And people also understand that real change in America has never come from the top on down. It has always come from the bottom on up.
Amen. If you're in New York, go out, make it happen. And I mean, in order to make life better for a lot of people, there's going to need to be profound systemic change. And in order to keep, frankly, viable as a species in the context of the climate crisis, there's going to need to be profound systemic change. There's one person talking about that, fundamentally, and who's carried that for his career. All of his flaws, all of his foibles, like everybody else has, it is a distinct and shining example. The Norwegian. Sanders would be a centrist if he was a politician. In Norway, besides the level of money in politics, why do you think the U.S. is so far right when it comes to establishment politics?
I mean, there's a lot of different threads to that. There's like the oil interests. There's, the South and racism. There's so many reasons why we were pushed to the right.
I think the Southernization thesis is one that I have a lot of that makes a lot of sense to me through, I mean, obviously, like, systemic and structural racism is not geographic in America. The North and the West Coast, everywhere there has been people of color, there has been systemic racism and disenfranchisement in the United States. But the Southern system, through, practicing American apartheid, I mean, the apartheid regime learned from the South to the virulent opposition to organized labor, which has spread from the South to the rest of the country and degraded standards for everyone, to a system that in many respects, particularly in the South, like the through line of Southern feudalism and Southern corporate monopolies are not really that big. I mean, they're different, not that radically different. And I think when you have a powerful geographic bloc holding back, not only holding back progress, but actually Southernizing the whole system. I mean, Barack Obama was the first non-Southern Democratic president since JFK. So even as the South went Republican and the white South left the Democrats because the Democrats sort of marginally became more the party of civil rights, and obviously not always so marginally, but in some ways marginally, in some ways not marginally. You still felt the need in the Democratic Party to elect conservative Democratic presidents from the South. I mean, I love Jimmy Carter, but in the context of Jimmy Carter's time, he was not a liberal at all. I mean, he was so not a liberal that, Ted Kennedy ran against him as a sitting president. And Ted Kennedy, who I have a lot of respect for, and, Massachusetts love for the Kennedys on some level, Ted Kennedy's not, he's not Bernie Sanders. He's not someone who would just run. His critique wouldn't be rooted necessarily in maybe in the same level of idealism, but it was certainly a very rigorous critique. And part of it was just that, Jimmy Carter was a conservative Democratic president. Certainly Bill Clinton was, by Democratic standards, very conservative Democratic president. So, yeah. A lot of factors, but I do think the South is a big factor. Hector. I think the underlying premise of the argument is to be able to sue gun manufacturers, that the gun manufacturers should be making their products safer, yes, and that it should be used for their intended purposes. The summer is going to be quite interesting in Brazil with the Summer Olympics. Yeah, no kidding. AJS, I think definitely the structure of the Constitution has the biggest impact on the conservatives and the right nature of American politics. Things like the Senate separation of executive and legislative branches and gerrymandering allow reactionary forces to prevent social movement from building. Yeah, there's a problem there. Joseph Ballin, 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. Joseph Ballin, this is it. Bernie's up against the heart of darkness, the beast that is Wall Street. No beast represents the modern Democratic Party. No state best represents the modern Democratic Party than New York. Neoliberal, socially liberal, and identity politics. And yes, New York is the home state of Sanders. So Sanders could use that as an excuse as the home state. I'm sorry, you said yes, New York is the home state of New York? So Sanders could use that as an excuse if he loses, but this is important for Bernie to win. It's vital that he wins. Keep an eye out for exit polling and tell everyone to get out and vote for Sanders. Absolutely. Get out, vote for Bernie if you're in New York. Method Mel. Turns out liberals have won money in politics. It turns out positions it turns out liberals have. 1, money in politics is fine. 2, single payer is bad. 3, restrictive election laws are fine. The Empire State decrees that Empire State must elect an imperial empress. Attorney Andrew, gun liability stuff. Getting rid of the immunity would not mean that every gun manufacturer or seller is liable for the deaths caused. The rat poisoning analogy is something already conceived of in product liability law. What getting rid of the immunity would do is allow plaintiffs to sue for issues with guns that make them less safe than a gun should be. Right. This threat of litigation would compel gun manufacturers to produce safer guns and gun selling practices. This is why Bernie's argument is incomprehensible, but also why Hillary's argument is disingenuous. Getting rid of the immunity does not stop things like Sandy Hook necessarily, but what it does do is shift risk from the public to manufacturers, so they actually have to do things like trigger locks and things like that. So they actually have to account for litigation when creating and selling their products. Frankly, I wish people would talk more about the qualified immunity police are granted that prevents them from being prosecuted for killing people for the exact reasons outlined above. Lessening their immunity shifts risk from the public to the police, so they have to really think before shooting an unarmed black man. Absolutely. Eric, we need a presidential candidate that can perform a lobotomy. Dr. Ben or bust. I was redrafted. And I'm looking forward to like 2018 where Ben Carson just comes out and just like, I'm running for president. In 2020? No, I'm going to challenge Hillary Clinton in the 2016 race that is still taking place. Just like forgets what year he's in. That's the next step. Unless Ben Carson's just messing with everybody. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I'm a Dada absurdist. What did we say? He's the Andy Kaufman of presidential candidates. Check this out. Donald Trump is a rapist, but he's nice to me and gave me fruit cobbler. He should be president. What? Oh, okay. You could say that in a mic.
Ingraham.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that why you didn't want to say it?
Why?
I'm just messing with you. No, I don't. We're really going to the bottom. I played this, and it's funny because I'm a pretty chill guy about tech stuff. If we're keeping it 100, like if I ever had like a tantrum while I was hosting.
No, I don't think you tantrumize. No,
I'm not. That's not my style. Sam, I wouldn't say he's tantrum, but Sam's much more like, God damn it! What the? You know, he gets a little bit more revved up. Nothing compares to what we're about to play. Although, to be fair, if you work inside this game, you might have a little bit more sympathy for this freak out than if you don't. But here it is, Laura Ingraham, who's a terrible person, having a human reaction to a really stressful situation while she's hosting her show. She has tech difficulties, and she doesn't exactly handle it chilly. Let's check it out.
Call the Laura Ingraham Show. 1-855-40-LAURA.
I'll be back with interest.
Yeah.
I'll be back with interest.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. This is a horrific story. A new type of way that kids can destroy their lives, ruin their lives, or in this case, end their lives. What's going on? What do I do, guys?
Hold on. Pause it. She's not upset about the story that she's reading about a new way that kids can destroy their lives.
I don't think it was cell phone guns.
And their lives. Yeah, it's not probably it's like some type of new like Snapchat thing or something. Destroy their lives, end their lives, ruin their lives. No, she's not upset about that. That would have been pretty powerful. She did that weird, typical right-wing like intro read, and then she was like, guys, what are we going to do about this? The kids are dying. Not what she's talking about.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear anything.
What do I do? Drew, could you hear something in yours? No, right?
You should take the mics down.
Are you on best of?
Yeah, Drew should take the mics down.
Are you on best of? We have dead air? We got to put a best of on Drew. We're going to lose every fucking station we have. This is unbelievable.
I love it. Clearance comes on. That's so perfect. That was kind of like existential. What am I going to do?
It's you're stuck in impotence and you're unable to, like, dead air is going on at every moment except what you're actually saying.
Do your parents listen to the fun half?
No.
How high were you when you selected that sound for today?
Oh, I just found it this morning. So only a little.
How high were you? Yeah. I was gonna say. So how stoned did you? Yeah. You're like, oh, it's Michael Day, man.
Well, I pulled some drops from that, so we've got.
Okay, let me hear.
You guys. We have dead air. What's going on? What do I do, guys?
If you play that in the middle of a genuine Sam like upset attack, I will.
We got to put a best of on Drew. We're going to lose every fucking station we have.
If you play that while Sam is genuinely freaking out about a phone connection, you will break me. I will double over.
We've got anger for a reason.
That's what Sam's like when the tech problems happen. I'm angry at Fire RTC for a reason. All right.
I'm in their face because I love them. Don't you get that?
Well, I think it's clear. I bring the love on this show. I love you, everybody. Okay, not safe to drink. Wow, guys, how rude to Trump. It's been well documented that he was getting Slurpees on 9/11. Can't find the news reports now, but they were there. Miss being in the same place as the Muslim celebrations on that day. Sandinista, good interview. Would love to hear more analysis on Latin American issues. Absolutely. In case you folks don't know it, Blue Nation Review is owned by True Blue Media, which was created by David Brock to support Hillary Clinton. Peter Dow is also the CEO of True Blue Media.
I'll make that money.
Got to get on that money. First of all, here's what you got to do. You write a column blaming Bernie for the tone. Then you got to kill somebody traded by
any word that has any connotation, no matter how remote.
Yeah.
That can be flipped to make Bernie look like a sexist because we know he's a real sexist involved in the campaign.
I find the way Bernie Sanders treats women to be disgusting. I think to treat women like an object and to, as an example, maybe take advantage of a position of authority or something like that. How you would do that is incomprehensible to me. So when you saw Bernie Sanders say, I saw Hillary Clinton out campaigning, what does he mean by saw? That's objectification. Quick, write 50 blog posts and tweet about it and be goddamn obnoxious.
Bernie's so misogynist against these bankers.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders. I'll tell you why he hates Goldman Sachs. Because Goldman Sachs has we're female bankers. And the deal is, why? Why does, and you say, well, why does he have such a gander for J.P. Morgan? Because J.P. Morgan gave donations to battered women shelters because Bernie Sanders hates women.
Get Hillary, fuck. Crooked Hillary, fuck.
And you say, why does Bernie hate Deutsche Bank so much? Well, I wonder why. I mean, what did a little old Deutsche Bank ever do to anybody? They're a nice European bank. I know fellows who work there. What did they do? Deutsche Bank sent out a company memo encouraging women to take their daughters to work to show them that they too could succeed on Wall Street. That's why Bernie Sanders doesn't like Deutsche Bank, because he is a misogynist. The idea that, as an example, you might take advantage of an intern. sorry. Just disgusting. All right. Jay-Z, I agree with Matt. I do think there are times when Trump is, as we say, extracting the Michael. He's stupid, but boxing clever. I don't understand that. I look forward to Latin American pinkish President Trump making great deals with both favela dwellers and petrochemical transaction. You know how hard it was for me not to laugh when he said Lula made great deals? When Lula made deals. That was so... Took a lot. I have to remember I was speaking with the head of the Brazil Institute. Kasich Institute. Kasich's response is nowhere near as good as when Wiener blew up. I don't even remember that. The DX Fool. Hey guys, have you asked Heidi Cruz if she sat in on a Hillary Clinton speech at Goldman Sachs and if she transcribed it for future use? Also, per Brad Friedman, outside of Erie County, Long Island, and in SC New York, polling stations are open only from noon to 9 p.m. during the primaries. Been this way for almost 110 years. That's weird. Jay Chivone. Come on. You know Trump didn't mean to say 7-Eleven. He meant to say Snake Eyes. Wow. I had forgotten how funny Saturday Night Live is. Dude, Pickle Envy Munch. Your Bill Clinton seems to be borrowing from Michael Richards' stand-up routines. While governor of Georgia, Jimmy Carter, requested citizens drive with their lights on for a day in support of Lieutenant William Calley. Russell at IM. Is Michael's Kasich's invitation similar to Doug's on purpose? Enjoy them both, by the way. There's a hint of Doug there. That's kind of my angle in on Kasich, although I like Doug a lot more than Kasich. E. Huntley, listening to Morning Joe this morning. Mika, never mind. Okay. Bush and Chains, dude. My girlfriend left for NYC this morning. You better treat her right when she's there. Don't make me come over there. Trust me, I will treat her right. I think you can rest assured on that. A lot of Sizzler will be playing, my friend. Sugar High. You got to put together a list of Hillary shills who have forfeited their credibility during this primary, among them Joanne Reed, Paul Krugman, and Anna Marcotte. Look, after this is over, you're still going to appreciate things that these people write. Like, I'm with you, but some people have value beyond, the conflict of the campaign. So let's be brutal, but let's be emotional, intelligent too.
But yeah, use it to inform your future reading.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's completely legitimate to say, of course, to read it as how people called things and how they approach things. It is revealing. And Bonora, great interview today. It was great. I mean, look, it was truly fantastic. It was great. What I love about the Trump thing is I don't even know if people are being real anymore. It's great. It's fantastic. Missouri Blues, optics are optics, whether you're not, you intend it. Insert Dukakis in an army helmet, not Bernie's fault, but anyone could have guessed that this is exactly where Hillary's supporters would have taken this throwing the bill optic. Maybe so, but you would have guessed it based on how utterly ludicrous they have been with regards to these things. And that type of protest about money in politics is very old.
Yeah, it's creative, and I doubt very much that a whole bunch of people find that persuasive, to be honest.
I actually think that most people find it totally ridiculous. Isha, the Bernie campaign sent a CD and a T-shirt to a T-shirt company that said, "Bernie is my comrade." Bernie needs to own the red bait and not co-opt it to disarm. Okay, that's pretty funny.
I agree. Let's start using comrade more.
I'm into that. Uchiwali, I don't get the Hillary Clinton sexism charge. Nobody throws money at strippers in a strip club. They stuff money in their G-strings. All right, well, this might not be a great direction. They stuff money in their G-strings. Those are two different things. Her supporters are conflating the two things intentionally. Nice distraction. Uchiwali getting in with the precision there.
Wonder if Peter Dow has done much research.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, to be fair, you don't just throw dollars on them.
Hey,
See,
Peter,
a lot of rappers, they like to say you throw dollars on them, Fetty Wap, Wiz Khalifa. But the reality is, when you're at the club, you put it in the G-string. And I think it's disgusting.
Bill takes Peter to the strip club. He's like, does this remind you of anything?
This reminds you of anything? Yeah, that's right. You fucked that column up, Peter. Now take him out in the back, get rid of him, and drag his body to the park. Pervy Ben Carson is an underused character. I agree. I mean, look, let me holler at you. Brilliant boy. Let's hope Bernie wins, but any other Berniacs rely on the same fundraising model. Will the constituency remain awake? Yes. And you're seeing it in local races, and the future of running is progressive, and the conflict between people's desires and raw money special interests is going to get clearer and clearer and define the next phase of American politics. Rumsfeld Lizard, thank you for highlighting Peter Dow's insanity, Michael. One of my favorite Dowisms from his never-ending quest to leave no room for parody occurred earlier this year when he critiqued the hashtag #Which
Yeah.
A tag that was obviously critiquing Hillary's... Oh, I see where this is going. Critiquing Hillary's shifting positions, complete with a campaign logo to the arrow going in both directions to drive the point home. Darrow seriously argued that this was a coded misogynist language, calling Hillary a witch. Real gem. Who is this guy?
This is what they do. I mean, it's the same. It's the same group of people who thought that Bernie ralliers on Friday, they had like a bund armband or something like that.
Jesus. People are, yeah, I mean, that's pushing it.
A little bit, yeah.
Because, I mean, again, you can read like Anna Marcotte and Joy Reid, and I should say, Anna Marcotte's a friend of mine, but she knows what I think. And Joy Reid and Paul Krugman, all of them, like, and strong, particularly with Anna and Paul, and strongly disagree and discredit a lot of their arguments. But I mean, that is actually even another level from that.
Yeah,
I mean,
he had to apologize.
That's just beyond, that's beyond parody. Nick, Michael, I have a limerick for you. Bernie is fine, as is Jill Stein. As to the rest, the very best is but swine. Nick from Oakland. Okay. Petrus, Michael, thanks for the thoughtful and literate commentary. Do you think that there is an HRC or bust sentiment in the polity? I think you actually might see that if things shift, yes. Grandiose idolization of one's relevancy is a symptom of narcissism. Only Kasich thinks he's relevant. That's exactly right. What are Dem Democrats count excluding? What are the Dem Democrats count excluding southern states? I don't know the exact count, but I mean that's not really relevant, frankly. I mean, they had southern primaries. Hillary leads. I'm not into this wishful thinking.
Yeah, it's like
in any way, shape, or form.
Isn't one thing we support here just universally as the like 50-state solution? So
absolutely, and the other thing is that the future of the Southern Democratic Party is actually pretty progressive because it's going to be increasingly, not only, of course, it's historically African American, but younger liberal African American who voted for Bernie and Hispanic, and then white transplants who are a little bit more progressive. So the Southern Democratic Party is actually going to get quite made over as well. And we need a 50-state. And also because people are suffering in the South. I mean, you can't... I don't like this kind... I mean, I'll make fun of the South all day and have a lot of fun doing it. But the actual, fuck a certain region, I'm not with that. Daria, really support yesterday's caller Alan's sentiments on the importance of congressional local races because the Democratic presidency without a strong base of progressive legislators is weak. Could you guys please spend more time pointing out such progressive candidates, especially those not mentioned in the mainstream media? This is especially important since in New York and Florida, among others, congressional primaries are in the same days as presidential primaries. Really need people to come out and vote in all elections. Can we also stop with your vote only counts in swing and blue state talks? It's bad enough that the DNC doesn't support candidates in red states and treats them like a lost cause. Everybody counts and should join the movement. Absolutely. I meant that just in terms of presidential vote. And there's very important congressional races, and I agree with you. We will highlight them more. Carl Sagan. I always knew there were sellout Democrats, but I've been surprised at the amount of Democratic voters who don't take a critical look at their own party. It's made me feel very weird about people that I thought were generally on my side. But they're willing to put up with the things like Debbie Schultz supporting payday lenders. Why do you think there are so many people in a party that will forgive bad votes on non-social issues? Are they too dry? Do most liberals not see financial regulation as important?
Not everyone is informed as you are.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Fight test. Is there a good read on the southernization of the United States, Michael? Yeah, this guy Michael Lind wrote some good books on that, but I don't remember the name of those books.
Fear Itself by Ian Katznelson, which is on the New Deal, is really good in how the Southern Democrats played into that.
I would also read Michael Lynn's It's Up From Conservatism. And he also wrote a book on Texas specifically. It's kind of half like a anti-Bush polemic, but also really gets into how Texas kind of made over the rest of the United States in a bad way, obviously. Dixon, can you give me any guidance or insight on how best vote for delegates in New York to best support Bernie? Yeah, on the right side of the ballot, Bernie's in the top of the ballot. So you vote for Bernie, and on the right side of the ballot, there's a list of delegates. They're not mixed up. Hillary's delegates are on the bottom. Bernie's delegates are on the top. And then just fill in the bubbles for Bernie's delegates. All right, let's take a last phone call. Then we'll race through the rest of these IMs, and then we're out of here. You're calling from a 515 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Good day. My name is Mark Campbell. I'm calling from, well, usually I'm in Binghamton, New York, but I'm in Manhattan today.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Good day. I was just calling because I just emailed you, and I'm not sure whether you have talked about it before, but in terms of today's election, there's a potential lawsuit that it might be worth people getting provisional ballots, even if they're not Democrats, they might be able to.
Yes, yes. People have mentioned that before. I don't know much about it, but definitely check out the provincial ballot situation, and ask. The people at polling places are very helpful, like 99% of the time, and they really. Yeah, thank you, thanks so much. Okay. AJS. Progressive candidates to support in Brooklyn. Debbie Medina. She's running in Bushwick and Williamsburg for state senate as a socialist in the Democratic Party line, opposing de Blasio's faux affordable housing plan, which is really a real estate development giveaway. Matt and the BK. Michael, this captures a lot of my sentiment. Okay, I'll check that out. Trump, Carson, 2016, two men with no brains. Every time I hear Trump mention that he went to Penn, I get less huffy correcting people when they mistake my alma mater with Penn State. Nathan, your Ben Carson sounds like Mitch Hedberg. Oh, that's funny. I don't know. I actually don't know what Mitch Hedberg sounds like. Red at IM. Does it seem rather ridiculous for people who are protesting income inequality be throwing money at Hillary when rocks are free? Ooh. I don't know about that, bro. Guy who writes for David Brock. I remember him destroying Sunita Hill, so not buying this misogyny accusation. Borat. Bank of Manilak. Kiss, how much? And Hillary is like $25,000 an hour. $225,000 an hour. Bullprog. I love Barney Frank, but he was a petulant child in the word last night. He's been a petulant child this whole campaign cycle. He's been awful. Purple applesauce. Did you see my email about Wall Street having the feels and gentleman folds his bill lengthwise? No, I did not. I'm not following you on that one. Christo, am I crazy to at least still expect an acknowledgement of my image of Trump cabinet I sent in Gmail nearly a month ago? Great show today. You two are quite effective as a duo. Well, thank you, and I don't remember that, and I will look it up. The final IM of the day. Oh, beach break. Michael, I can't wait to see a cartoon of Hillary as a stripper with a cigar smoking George Clooney throwing dollar bills at her. I sort of pre-screened that. Sorry, everybody. Anyways, we are going on vacation, but we have brand new content for you. You're a member, so you will get Sam's conversation with Cliff about the fallout of the New York primaries that are obviously taking place today. And if you're watching this on the live stream, go to our website and sign up for the email blast. Subscribe to Two Dope Boys, the number 2 Dope Boys, and a podcast on iTunes. What else do we have to tell the people before we get out of here?
Oh, it's just 2dopeboyspod.com.
And 2dopeboyspod.com, and they can subscribe off of there now as well. Okay, 2dopeboyspod.com. New content for you. Sam is in Vegas, obviously, Thursday and Friday. Then we go on vacation, but we have all brand new shows for you
Some
while we're on
delicious
vacation.
pre-recorded content.
Like, actually, I mean, honestly, it's really fantastic. All right, everybody. Thanks, Matt. See you all soon.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want.